He was amazed by the huge crowd gathered there. Not a crusade, just Sunday service. Pastor Odun preached only a short while, but people cheered and celebrated his words as though they had never heard anything like it. What amazed Timothy more was when Pastor Odun mentioned on the altar that the church needs 120 million for a church project, and he said only 10 people should come out and contribute it. Over 500 people came out, donating 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, and even 100 million. Timothy lost count at some point. He felt frustrated. He spoke about faith and salvation, but all people seemed to want were promises of riches and miracles. Once upon a time, in a town lived a young boy named Timothy. Timothy was born into a family deeply rooted in faith, where his parents, Chioma and Obi, held strong Christian values. They adored their only son and spent hours teaching him about God's love, taking him to church every Sunday, and praying together as a family. Timothy would listen, sometimes even repeating their prayers. They teach him about Jesus, telling him biblical stories, and he was always attentive and followed his parents' teachings. But as he grew older, Timothy started to view life differently. By the time Timothy became a young man, he was no longer interested in his parents' teachings. He found their faith routine tiring, and instead, he wanted to explore the world on his own terms. He was influenced by his group of bad friends. He spent his days and nights with friends who encouraged him to be carefree, to attend parties, and enjoy life without restrictions. His parents noticed his changing behavior and often worried about him. Chioma would gently remind him, "Timothy, my son, remember the teachings of God. We taught you about Jesus, Christian values. Have you forgotten so easily? You have so much potential. Think about a meaningful life, a Christian life. You have to rededicate your life to God, maybe even becoming a pastor one day." But Timothy would laugh and shake his head, replying, "Mother, that's not my life. I want to be free and live my life to the fullest without such responsibilities." Timothy continued to live a carefree life, disregarding his parents' teachings. This made Chioma grow worried. One day, she asked Timothy to sit with her eyes filled with tears. "Timothy," she began softly, "I love you more than anything in this world. Seeing you like this, straying so far from the life we've tried to show you, it pains my heart. If you continue down this path, I don't know what will happen. I might even lose you, and I couldn't bear that." Timothy looked into his mother's eyes, shocked by her sadness. He had always known how much she loved him, but her words stirred something in him. Suddenly, he wondered if maybe it was wrong to ignore everything his parents had taught him. He thought deeply for several days, realizing that his choices didn't just affect him, they affected his family too. After many nights of reflection and heartfelt talk with his parents, Timothy finally agreed to change his life. He promised his mother that he would devote himself to God and to living a meaningful life. In time, he joined his father's church, joined a department in the church, became very active. Soon, he started leading the teenagers in church, teaching them about Christian values. Everyone loved him in the church, and parents used him as a good example when talking to their children. The teenagers flock around him in church. Whenever they sight him, they will smile at him and shout, "Brother Timothy." Not long, he was appointed the youth leader of his church. After years of showing dedication and devotion to the things of God, he never missed a single Sunday service. He was always preaching the gospel and sermon to his friends and sometimes to the congregation. Everyone loved him because of his uprightness and how godly he was. They enjoyed his sermon and would often love to listen to him preach. He was nicknamed the fire preacher. When Timothy turned 22, he told his parents he wanted to be a pastor, just like they have always wanted him to be. His parents were delighted and gave Timothy their blessing. Soon, Timothy packed his things and moved to the busy city of Victoria Island to begin his mission. When Timothy arrived in Victoria City, it was late at night and he had nowhere to stay. The city was big, and unfortunately for him, all the hotels he could afford were full. He wandered around the streets, trying to look for where he could sleep overnight. As he wandered, he saw a small church and decided to walk there. He saw a young guy of his age there as a security. He pleaded if he could sleep overnight there. The security guy, named Djinn, kindly told him no, that the church management would sanction him. Feeling sorry for him, he offered him to sleep in his room. Timothy was grateful for Djinn's kindness, and the two quickly became friends. They spent nights talking, and Timothy told Djinn all about his plans to start a church in Victoria City. As they lay down to sleep, Timothy noticed how busy the city was and asked Djinn if it was always this way. Djinn laughed, explaining that people from all over came to Victoria City every year to see Pastor Odun, a famous pastor who performed amazing miracles and was known for his powerful prophecies. He can heal the sick, raise the dead, and when he says a thing, it comes to pass, and his church is always packed with people, Djinn said. This made Timothy curious, but he soon fell asleep, thinking about the future of his own church. The next day, Djinn helped Timothy find a small space he could rent to start his church. Timothy set up his church with woods, printed a simple banner, and bought a wooden chair. With that, his church was ready to open. He began preaching on the streets, telling everyone about God's love. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Come to him and be saved. He would shout on top of his voice. A few people liked his message and began attending his church. However, most of the people in Victoria City were more interested in miracles and prophecies, like the ones Pastor Odun was famous for. Timothy's small church grew slowly, and he was grateful for his few dedicated members, including Djinn, who remained by his side. But deep inside, Timothy started feeling disappointed. His father had taught him that being a pastor wasn't about money or fame, but he couldn't help feeling envious whenever he heard people talk about Pastor Djinn and his miracles. One day, while Timothy was out walking, he noticed a young man stepping out of a fancy car in front of a big mall. People around him began whispering excitedly about how wealthy Pastor Odun was and how people gave him expensive gifts because they believed he was chosen by God. Timothy listened, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and envy. Why does he have so much while I have so little? Timothy thought to himself, I preach for hours, yet only a few people come to my church. One day, Pastor Odun organized an open crusade. The whole of Victoria City was very busy. The traffic was so much. Everyone wants to be there. The day of the crusade was a weekly service at Timothy's church. To his surprise, only his friend Djinn was in attendance. He became angry and started blaming God for not giving him power like Pastor Odun. Djinn tried to calm him down. Curious, they decided to attend the crusade. Timothy was in awe of the miracles that happened at the crusade. The lame walked, the blind see, the dead brought back to life. He experienced miracles like never before. He was in awe that Pastor Odun wasn't even laying hands on them. But when he declared something, it happened. When he got home, he couldn't sleep, thinking about how God is using Pastor Odun. Curious to see more for himself, Timothy decided to attend Pastor Odun's church one Sunday. When he arrived, he was amazed by the huge crowd gathered there. Not a crusade, just Sunday service. Pastor Odun preached only a short while, but people cheered and celebrated his words as though they had never heard anything like it. What amazed Timothy more was when Pastor Odun mentioned on the altar that the church needs 120 million for a church project, and he said only 10 people should come out and contribute it. Over 500 people came out, donating 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, and even 100 million. Timothy lost count at some point. He felt frustrated. He spoke about faith and salvation, but all people seemed to want were promises of riches and miracles. After the service, Timothy shared his frustration with Juwon, seeing how unhappy his friend was. Juwon told him about someone who could help, a mysterious man named Baba Egba. Juwon explained that Baba Egba was a powerful man who knew secrets about the spiritual world. Don't be surprised. Many of these men of God has dark powers. They just lie and say it's God's miracle. I even heard that all these big pastors go to him regularly. He can give you the power to perform miracles. Juwon said, then people will flock to your church just like they do at Pastor Odun's. At first, Timothy was shocked. Isn't this like asking for power from the devil? He asked. But Juwon assured him that Baba Egba wasn't evil. He was just wise and knew things that others didn't. Timothy hesitated, but his desire for success was too strong to ignore. He agreed to meet Baba Egba. They made arrangements, and Baba Egba arrived at the church a few days later. He was an old man with mysterious eyes, and he carried 2 small containers with him. Baba Egba told Timothy that one container held a red powder that would allow him to see visions and make prophecies that will come to pass. The other container held a liquid that would let him perform miracles like healing the sick. But be careful, Baba Egba warned. The power doesn't last. The people you heal will eventually fall sick again. Then Baba Egba invited Timothy to a secret meeting in a place beyond the human world. If Timothy agreed, he would gain the powers. He would be able to do great miracles, just like Pastor Odun, but there would be a price. Timothy shocked and couldn't believe what his ears were hearing. He turned and looked at Juwon in amazement, with his eyes widened. Then his mind was made up and was ready to pay the price. On the night of the meeting, Baba Egba told Timothy and Juwon to wait in the church. Exactly at 8 p.m., Baba Egba drew a strange shape on the wall, and suddenly a portal appeared. On the other side was a dark, airy forest filled with twisted trees. Though nervous, Timothy and Juwon followed Baba Egba through the portal. After walking for a long time, they reached a large temple with a statue at its entrance. Inside, they met the master of the dark realm, a tall figure with a booming voice that echoed through the temple. The master offered Timothy great powers, but warned him to never speak the holy name that Christians call upon during miracles. The master gave Timothy a special shock to open portals between the human world and the dark realm, and a container to fetch water from a mystical tree. Sprinkle this water in your church, the master said, and anyone who enters will still loyal to you. Back in Victoria City, they did as the man instructed, and they took the water and penned it at the 4 corners of the church, just as they were instructed. Timothy started to use the substance. He applied it on his mouth and went to the street to resume his preaching as usual. While he was preaching on the street, he saw a blind man who was singing and begging for alms from passerby. Timothy walked up to the man and prayed for him. Then suddenly, the man regained his sight and started jubilating. People gathered around them and asked what happened. The man who was once blind explained to them that he was blind from birth, but after Timothy prayed for him, he regained his sight, and everyone was surprised and marveled at the miracle. So they started asking Timothy where his church was. They were very curious. When people heard about this, they rushed to his church, eager to witness the miracles. Soon, his small space was overflowing with people, and Timothy had to rent a bigger space to hold his services. He became well known and very wealthy, riding the latest expensive cars and going around town with security. At the end of each month, Timothy attended meetings in the dark realm. The master demanded a sacrifice. Each month, one member from Timothy's church would be chosen by the dark forces to keep his power strong. Though uneasy, Timothy agreed, reasoning that the sacrifices were a small price to pay for success. One day, Timothy decided it was time to settle down. There was a member of his church named Chisom. She was the choir leader, very beautiful, and had a lovely angelic voice. Timothy had feelings for Chisom, so he asked her out and told her that the Lord appeared to him in a dream and revealed she would be his wife. Chisom was very happy because being Timothy's wife meant all the women in the church would look up to her, respect her, and treat her like a mother. So she accepted his proposal, and they had a very grand, expensive wedding that everyone talked about for a long time. One day, a woman named Mercy joined Timothy's church. She was a faithful Christian, deeply committed to God. Mercy believed that Timothy was a true man of God and admired his ability to perform miracles. She became very active in church, joining different groups and helping wherever she could. Impressed by her dedication, Timothy made her a deaconess. But that very month, at the secret meeting, Mercy was chosen as the next sacrifice. The master cast a sickness upon her, and no doctor could find a cure. Mercy's health quickly worsened, and she grew weaker by the day. Each time Mercy went to the hospital for a checkup, the doctors told her she was fine and that there was no medical reason for her sickness. She went to many hospitals for tests and scans, but every doctor and machine said the same thing. She was healthy. Despite this, Mercy's health kept getting worse. As Mercy's condition declined, Timothy began to feel the weight of his choices, realizing that his quest for power had led him down a path he never intended to take. The people around him believed in his miracles, but only he and Juwon knew the truth behind his powers. Days turned into weeks, and Timothy's church continued to grow, but his heart was filled with guilt. He wondered if he could ever escape the dark path he had chosen. What would happen to Mercy? Will she survive, or will she become just another sacrifice for Timothy's power? This and many more will be revealed in part 2. Please subscribe to this channel, like, and also drop your comments in the comment section. I will see you in the next part. Till then, stay blessed and positive. God bless you.